When kids get to 5th grade, they're going to have to start reading some poetry. Hate to be the bearer of possible bad news for some readers and students, but that's just the way it is. But here's the thing, boys and girls, that's not really a bad thing, because there are some really cool poems out there, and it's kind of up for you to discover them. We got a couple of books in the queue that are really good poetry books. This one, though, is the top of the heap, mainly because I love this cat's music. Songs for Jimi, the story of guitar legend Jimi Hendrix. Now, at first you say to yourself, it's not really a poetry book because it's an illustrated book that has some beautiful art from Adele Rodriguez. Yeah, the art's gorgeous, no question. But then you look at the prose, and because we're talking a poem here, we're talking prose, and that's from Charles R. Smith Jr. It tells the story of Jimi Hendrix's life, and one wouldn't think that this would be a really good or appropriate poetry book, or not maybe good or appropriate, but wow, why would you, and how could you, and would it be any good? The answer is yes to all those things. Just check out the art. It's one of those cases where which came first, the art or the text? And in both cases, it's just like that chocolate peanut butter mixture where it's just perfect together. Now, who's this going to be good for? I'll give you an example. This past year, I was teaching 5th grade, and it was fun. We read a book, though. It was a poetry book, and I forget what it was, but it wasn't really good, and it didn't hold the interest of the children. It was about an immigrant who was a student somewhere in middle America, and I'll be honest with you, most of the kids were pretty bored by it. This book is far from boring, and it's not going to be that, I'll call it mamby-pamby poetry that your teacher's going to say, read this. This is poetry that breathes and lives and smacks you in the face when necessary. It's beautiful stuff. It doesn't really smack you in the face. That was just hyperbole. Hyperbole. You know, there are some words that I misspeak all the time. Hyperbole is one of them. So when I teach, I have to be super careful because for the longest time I couldn't say hyperbole. I always called it hyperbole until my wife said, that's bowling really fast and it's not a word. It's hyperbole. And that's kind of what A Song for Jimi does. It's a beautiful book. That was a little tangential. The book is fabulous, though. Just dig into the art, and you will be a fan. It may even introduce some of those 5th graders or up, or even younger, to the music of Jimi Hendrix. And I hope it does, because we let our 5th grader, up for our rising 5th grader, hear some Jimi Hendrix just in the office one day, because he said, what's the book? And I said, it's a book about this musician. Great musician from the 60s, fabulous guitarist, singer. And it wasn't really his cup of tea. But it's good to introduce kids to the classics, because now whenever he's on the radio, we always pay attention to it and say, hey kids, that's Jimi Hendrix. It's awesome, of course, radio being what it is. It only plays like 2 or 3 songs from Hendrix, and that's kind of a pity also, but that's a separate rant. However, the book, though, is a fabulous one. It's Song for Jimi. The story of guitar legend Jimi Hendrix. It's by Charles R. Smith Jr. with fabulous illustrations that match the text and the time to a T by Adele Rodriguez. Check it out if you're looking for a poetry book that will make kids understand that all poetry is not boring and can be incredibly interesting. Stray with Daddy Mojo.